I'm Karis. I work with Oklahoma Visual Arts Coalition. I am also the person who kind of handles our workshops and panels under our Ask program. So a lot of those topics in the Ask program focus on professional development for artists. This workshop today is going to go into detail on how to kind of get ready after you've been accepted for an exhibition. This is really useful information, so useful that we do this same workshop every year. And this year, it's exciting, if you could go to the next slide, Fernando, because we partnered with a lot of organizations to do this. So we've partnered with Uncanny Art House, Chase Spivey will be speaking, Theresa Hultberg from Paseo will be speaking, and Ariana Weir-Temoshok will be speaking from the Oklahoma Visual Arts Coalition. I'll let all the organizations kind of speak on what they do and kind of why they're here. For us, the OVAC for short, we focus in on providing grants for artists, workshops and panels like these. We also do a few exhibitions throughout the year. At the end, we'll have a little slide up with upcoming events from all of the organizations as well. But I do want to introduce our three workshoppers today. So Ariana, who again is with Oklahoma Visual Arts Coalition, was born and raised in Oklahoma City and graduated from University of Oklahoma with a degree in visual art with an emphasis in printmaking. Over the last several years, she has worked at multiple nonprofit art organizations in OKC, and her current role at OVAC is Administrative and Artist Relations Manager. So any artists who work with us are probably going to work with Ariana. She manages incoming artist applications and assists Oklahoma artists in applying for all of the the OVAC opportunities that we offer throughout the year. We also have Theresa from the Paseo Arts Association. Theresa is the Programs and Exhibitions Manager and is also an artist, originally from Oklahoma City, who holds a Bachelor of Fine Arts from University of Oklahoma with a minor in art history. She works as, I said this already, the Programs and Exhibitions Manager, managing their annual artist-based programs. She also coordinates the art classes, professional development workshops, and monthly art exhibitions at PACC. As an artist, she works in both painting and printmaking, is a member artist at In Your Eye Gallery, which is also in Paseo, and served on the leadership team of Art Group OKC from 2018 to 2025. And our last workshopper is Chase Spivey with Uncanny Art House. Chase is a Norman-based multidisciplinary artist and creative director over at Uncanny. His work blends geometric abstraction, bold color, and interactive elements to create engaging visual experiences with a background in film, public art, and curation. Chase's practice explores the intersection of creativity, community, and play. You can go to the next slide. So, yeah, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Theresa with the Paseo. If you came in late, feel free to check in with me anytime. We're going to provide a digital resource kit for y'all, so we want to make sure everyone gets that. Thanks for being here.
Hello, everyone. I'm Theresa. Thanks, Karis, for that awesome intro. So like Karis said, I work for the Paseo Arts Association, and we are a nonprofit arts organization in Oklahoma City. If any of you haven't been to the Paseo Arts District yet, it's an awesome place in the center of OKC that has a lot of different galleries of many different kinds that you can explore, maybe even show your art at. So we are super excited to partner with OVAC and the Depot to do this workshop tonight. We love reaching new audiences, especially down here in Norman, so thank y'all for being here. I am going to kind of jump into things on the 2D side of getting ready for an exhibition. So just a few important reminders to start off that I wanted to go over, just in case you get bored later and you forget what I'm talking about. Overall presentation is important to consider before delivering artwork for an exhibition, also considering if a buyer takes it home. So this is something that I really like to remind artists of. Working in the galleries over in the Paseo, this is something where maybe we make a sale and then we realize, oh, we need to talk to the artist first because they can't take it home like this. So it's something to think about as you're accepted to a show is, what the buyer is going to see as well. Making the back and the sides of your artwork look as professional as the front is very, very important. You never know who will be looking at that after the show. Dedicating enough time to prepare for your work. So as we go through the presentation tonight, you'll see, there's actually quite a bit of prep work to go into it after you create your masterpiece, before you bring it to the gallery. So make sure that you give yourself maybe a day or two to get that done. It's also super important to remember that people who work at the gallery are very happy to help you ahead of time before the show. So making sure you have that open communication with them leading up to the exhibit drop-off date so that you all can both provide each other with information that might help each other out later on down the road. Also, finding out what kind of hanging hardware they prefer. We'll talk a little bit about a major hanging hardware that we'll use probably for most things, 2D. And also just remembering labeling the back of your artwork and just if you haven't done installation of hanging hardware before, practicing and testing your work. So we'll go to the next slide. So you finished your masterpiece, and maybe it's a painting on canvas, maybe it's a mixed media. You'll want to start thinking about how you can make that piece look as professional as possible. We'll pause. So one of the things that I want to think about, if you are an artist that has a medium that maybe you prefer to add a finish or a varnish, considering what you need to maybe do before you apply that varnish, maybe considering the different choices that you have if you're using gloss, matte, or semi-gloss. Varnish can really finish a piece of artwork or it can ruin it. So I recommend testing it on something else ahead of time. And also remembering that perhaps if you're wanting to use something that has more of a semi-gloss or a gloss finish, to photograph the artwork before you apply that. I have experienced this personally in the photography studio over at the PACC, where an artist maybe had a really high gloss varnish and wanted to do reproduction prints, but it's really difficult to get a photo that does not have a glare from the professional lights in the studio. So that's just kind of like a random thing I learned with experience that I wanted to share with y'all tonight. But again, varnish does help preserve pieces and also strengthens the appearance, so don't get too scared by that. Again, if you're working with a medium where maybe you're using gallery wrapped canvas, that is going to be probably one of the easiest materials that you're working with to prep. Gallery wrapped canvas is the one that is a lot thicker. It's a couple inches thick widthwise. And so there's, just depending on the gallery, maybe just check with them ahead of time, but most cases that's going to be a easier prep work. If you have neatly clean and painted sides of a gallery wrapped canvas, a lot of times adding that hanging hardware and not worrying about framing is what's going to happen. And you don't have to worry about anything else that I'm saying. Just kidding. If you work with works on paper, mixed media, it's always important to remember to, for me, a printmaker, adding an edition and the numbering of the edition, adding maybe the title, and then signing it in a visible place. I've framed things before and just completely forgot to sign them. That's a super important step. And then also, if you are planning on framing the work, thinking ahead of time about if you would like your signature to be visible, or if it's going to be maybe on the back of the piece, and just having that awareness, because a common question in galleries is, well, who made this? I don't see that it's signed. Is it this person or that person? Wall labels, title cards definitely help with that, but sometimes the buyer may have a preference and think, oh, well, I think it should have a signature on front. So just kind of taking that into account. And then as we finish that piece, we're going to move on to some tips for framing. One of the things that I really like to recommend is exploring different options. If you are framing a work on paper, that maybe, like this example, is a little busier or more maximalist, thinking about the framing that you're pairing with that so that it does not distract from the piece itself. If you do have a frame that maybe is really bright colors or has a lot of texture to it, it can kind of take away from the artwork. And that's a really good tip if you are maybe searching for a frame and you're doing it yourself where you're looking for a secondhand frame. Sometimes we see something and we're like, oh yeah, that's perfect. But just taking into account what the artwork would look like with it is super important. So really two options for finding the right frame for your piece. Like I said, DIY would be going to your local thrifted secondhand shops, finding a frame that's ready-made, that's maybe at a local art supply store or online. And that, of course, is going to be your lower cost option. Now, whenever we're preparing our work, one thing I didn't mention earlier is that you also want to think about your budget and your time. So if you maybe, for example, aren't too worried about budget and you don't have a lot of time, I highly recommend taking the professional route in that case. That way you're not stretching yourself too thin, taking a lot of important time out of your day to frame and mat and figure out all of these things kind of on your own. Of course, that is at a higher cost. So if you're like, well, my budget's really tight for this show, I really don't want to spend more money, definitely take the DIY route and use resources like this presentation and the guides that we're going to give you to make sure that you're doing things in a professional manner. So that, of course, is going to be the lower cost option. I typically go that route. I think I've probably framed maybe like 5 pieces of mine professionally using local frame shops, and they're really great to work with. They can also provide advice on frame choice. So if you're not sure, well, maybe this one or this one, what do you think? It's good to have that professional advice because they, of course, have a lot of artwork coming through as well. With that, if you are doing DIY, you can buy pre-cut and pre-sized pieces of mat board to go in DIY frames if they don't come with it. I recommend finding something that has glass to protect the artwork. Sometimes those are going to be missing and you may just have an exposed artwork out there on the wall. And then just a quick tip on DIY is kind of neatening up the back of the frame. You'll see in the video in a few slides a way that another artist locally has done that, and I think it's a really great way to go. So if you just invest in a roll of paper tape, which is a craft paper type framing tape, it'll really neaten up the back of your artwork. If you have maybe a frame that's been used a few times by other people, has lots of holes or maybe a lot of adhesive or is chipped in a lot of places, it's kind of just good to put a little Band-Aid on it, wrap it around the edges, and make sure that the back looks really clean. And that's a really budget-friendly way to kind of fix up a lot of the things that you might be getting for a low cost. So, next slide. So here's a couple of examples, image-wise, of a really good example, and then maybe one you want to avoid. So making sure that if you are buying a ready-made frame, that you are picking a pretty good quality one. This image on the top is something that we commonly have to send back if an artist comes and delivers artwork in a frame like this. Because one, yes, it does have a type of hanging hardware on the frame, but it's a sawtooth that's also attached with, I'm not even sure what. Usually it'll have 2 circles and it's kind of like clipped into the back of the backing. And it's not the most secure way to hang artwork. So we don't want to trust the pre-installed stuff on ready-made frames. We highly recommend to install the proper hanging hardware, which we'll talk about here in a second. So you'll see in the second image, this is an image of not a gallery wrapped canvas, but a painting on canvas placed into a frame. Offset clips have been placed, and I have that circled in green on the left to hold that piece in there. You can use offset clips for a variety of things. If you have a work on paper and then you also have backing, I highly recommend those to making sure that your piece does not fall out of the back of the frame. It also looks a lot nicer than a kind of Scotch tape or packing tape, things like that. So just overall clear appearance on the back. Measuring the frame whenever you are selecting it is also super important. The reason that I recommend kind of being picky about those frames is that you are most likely going to have to install D-rings and wire on them. And the majority of D-rings and wire will have maybe a 1/2-inch screw. And so if we have something that is maybe a very simple poster frame, the thickness of it's going to be very important, especially if it's made of wood, which we hope it is. And if you're installing your D-rings on there, the wood can split. It could go through. It could hit the glass on the back side or the front side and crack something. So you want to make sure that you're getting a really good quality frame that maybe has been loved a lot, but is sturdy enough to withstand hanging hardware installation. And again, if you're using gallery-wrapped canvas, just ignore everything I just said. We'll go to the next slide. We'll kind of jump into just recognizing the hanging hardware that most galleries will be requesting. So D-rings and wire are super common for the majority of 2D work. We'll talk a little bit about 3D work later with Ariana, but this is going to be kind of a standard across the board. So it's really important to kind of practice this and get good at installing that hardware. So whenever you're selecting it, it's important to consider the weight of your piece. You can definitely overdo the weight or underdo the weight. You'll see in the examples there are D-rings that have 2 holes. They have 3 holes, there's 1 hole. The standard one on the first left side is about 25 pounds, which is going to cover a majority of the artwork on the walls. Unless you're working extremely large scale, you probably won't even touch the 50-pound one. So we definitely don't want to touch the 50-pound one to something that's maybe this big. It's a little bit overkill. So just kind of keeping that in mind. It also could be more visible on the sides if you're hanging something that has very large D-rings. So it could stick out from the wall a little bit, or you might be able to see the edges of it. Wire is super important too. I think I say D-rings maybe like 20 times during this presentation, but wire is also very important. Whenever you are looking for your wire, you want to make sure that you're looking for, in quotation, picture wire. That's a quick tip that I usually tell artists. Hanging wire and picture wire is going to send you in the right direction. That way you aren't running into, oh, well, this is, a 20-pound wire, but it's craft wire. So braided wire and solid wire both work well for this, as long as it's picture and hanging wire. There's cases where maybe solid wire has been used, but it's actually craft wire, which can bend and snap. And so it looks the same, but it's not. So we want to make sure we're careful with that. Really getting D-rings and wire, you can buy them in bulk online, which I highly recommend. It's a little bit more cost efficient, and then you have maybe a lifetime supply of D-rings and wire. And it also takes away that extra time that you might be spending running to the store the night before a drop-off day. And so you can really have that stuff ready. You know that you have the right stuff. You don't have to worry about it every show that you have. And so we've got a video here that was created by Whitney Batres, who I did this presentation with last time. Really awesome video that shows you the proper way to install D-rings and wire on the back of an artwork. It also shows a really good example of a DIY frame that has been cleaned up, added paper tape on the back, and of all the different tools that you might need whenever you're attaching these at home. There's a video. You all will get the video. Okay, awesome. So we'll watch this together, and then we'll see if we have any questions.
Y'all will have this video too in your digital resource kit.
Yeah, so you'll get a digital resource kit that has all the artwork preparatory information on it, as well as a list of local resources and shops you can buy at.
How to install hanging hardware on the back of a framed piece and tie the picture frame wire so that you are ready to go for exhibition hanging and hopefully become the darling of your gallery and exhibit coordinators' lives. So As you can see, I have my framed piece here ready to go. I've already secured it with these offset clips along with
Ready-made frame that has been repurposed to have the proper hanging hardware. Like I mentioned earlier, having a thick enough frame so that the screws don't break through or split the wood is important. This, I think, is also a good example of getting really, really close to maybe too thin. This is probably the thinnest you want to go, is just that width of the D-ring here. It's also a good example of the height of the wire and how tight you want it to be. It has, of course, the pre-installed hanging hardware on here, but we just disregard that, pretend it doesn't exist. And then, of course, this is a ready-made frame that does have the fun little classic little picture frame. I would recommend avoiding ones that have this. This can often get in the way during install with the gallery. It might be a little larger, a little looser, hanging off the back. So I would say just maybe remove it altogether if you do get one that has this. And then, of course, this is one that comes with a pre-fitted mat. So it's a little bit easier to kind of fit your artwork into something that has all the pieces together. You don't have to repurpose 3 different things in one piece. So I will set this off to the side, so that if y'all wanted to check it out later, you can definitely do so. And I just wanted to mention a couple things real quick before we go on to the three-dimensional portion of the talk. One of the reasons that galleries are really specific on this is, one, for the security of your artwork on the wall of the gallery during the duration of the show. The D-rings and wire are going to be the most secure way to make sure your piece doesn't fall off the wall if it's 2D, of course. And of course, like the depot here, they utilize a hanging system. So it's good to communicate with the gallery, visit ahead of time, and see if they do utilize a hanging system. That is going to be where it definitely needs wire on it. It definitely needs some sort of method of attachment that will work with that system. So maybe testing it out ahead of time or visiting the gallery and showing them what you have to make sure that works. And then I will go ahead and see if anybody has any questions. We can definitely answer those before we move on to the next section. You can just shout it out at me if you do. I love it. Yeah, what's up?
Labeling the back, give the examples for that.
I don't think we have an example here, but it can be either a typed up or handwritten note that's just attached with tape to the back. Usually we recommend it has the title of the artwork, the medium, the year it was created is really important, your name printed on the back, as well as a signature somewhere on the piece. Of course, our signatures are maybe more like doctor's notes. We can't really tell what the name is, so we want to print that as well.
One thing that I've noticed a couple of times is some artists include an actual envelope with maybe a certificate of authenticity, and also even the provenance, like this piece has been shown at or displayed at so and so and so.
Or you could put a business card.
Yeah, a business card is really good. For those of you, if anyone's online listening, Fernando was saying that attaching a envelope to the back that has that information on it that a label would, but also includes a certificate of authenticity, is super, super helpful. That is a way to kind of, if you maybe have a collector and years on down the road, they're looking at the provenance of the piece, they can have the history of where that piece was exhibited before they bought it. And so that's something that really, that professionalism is really important to buyers sometimes, and it almost makes them more likely to buy the piece if they're like, oh, well, this is where it's been shown before. Yeah.
Is it necessary or advisable to put a copy mark on it? And also, is it important to date it, or can you just leave it?
You say a copyright mark? I think if you have the copyright to it, definitely include that.
If I made it, I have it.
Yeah. Well, you can definitely, I think maybe other workshops we could teach on the copyright portion of it, and if you wanted to actually own that copyright, or I think some artists do it. I don't see a real preference either way for as far as buyers go. I think if it's something that you are used to doing for all of your pieces, go ahead and keep that up. Maybe later on down the road, you kind of work on getting the copyrights for that.
It's like I wouldn't want somebody
Oh, for the work, yeah, yeah.
Just by putting it out there with my name on it, shouldn't be copyrighted.
Yeah, putting your artwork out there and having someone take a picture and reproduce it is, I think, all of our worst fears of being in a show. So I think definitely on the label, if you want to include that, you can. Again, if it's going to be something where it's in a gallery and they have title cards that they've created, that might be something to talk about with the gallery. And also maybe something where they could put a sign that says, please don't photograph. That's definitely kind of a consideration that Ariana might touch on a little bit too. Do you have any other questions? Yeah.
So this is kind of a weird question. Do you recommend or suggest duplicating like the information on the back of the piece itself and on the framing? Like if you have it framed, so would you want like a label on attached to the piece itself, and then on the outside of the frame where like maybe you have a nice paper finish or something?
Yeah, so the question was if we recommend duplicating the label on the inside and the outside of the frame. I think if the frame has paper backing and it's something where that might not be visible, I think definitely having it on the inside and the outside is important. I've also had buyers say, well, I think I'm going to get this reframed because I really think it'd look better with something else. That's another reason to do that as well. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you have any resources for people who might want to actually build their own frames? Get the wood, cut it. Do you have any?
Yeah, there are definitely some online resources that kind of walk you through that. There are some workshops, I think, around town. If you connect with some people that have more preparatory experience, they can kind of walk you through the steps of doing that. Highly recommend checking out some of our local workshops around here. I think Paseo has one with Trent Lawson sometimes, so he has a bit more of the custom frame building experience. But
The
Metropolitan Library System.
Spaces.
Yeah.
The OU Fabrication Lab.
OU Fabrication Lab.
Now people have kind of gotten some of the workshop space they need.
Yeah, that's awesome to have those workshop spaces available if you don't have the equipment or space to do so. So thank you, Karis, for that. Any other questions before we move on to even more preparatory stuff? All right, well, I will go ahead and I will hand things off to Ariana.
Yay. Thank you, Theresa. Yes, and I also just wanted to say to your copyright question, yeah, if I have never heard of someone going in person to a show, taking a picture of someone's work and starting to reproduce it, that is like worst behavior ever. You're gonna get like blacklisted if somebody sees you doing that. Yes, if they purchase the piece, it still is your copyright, which I think you were kind of saying, I believe, definitely look this up and fact check me because I'm not an expert, but I believe, like you were saying, the copyright is inherent to you creating it, and I believe you can also file online documentation to have like a certificate of your copyright if you would like to. I don't think most artists do unless you're operating at like a very high level. So just because someone buys, a painting of yours, they don't own the copyright. They just own it to display it in their own house. Or, they could resell it, but unless you give them a written agreement, I'm pretty sure they don't acquire the copyright to it. So hopefully that sets you at ease a little bit. Yeah, unless you make an agreement or something to give them the copyright, they shouldn't be reproducing it even if they buy your piece. But again, fact check me. Not an expert. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and start talking about preparing three-dimensional pieces and kind of some maybe like installation-based pieces, multimedia pieces, just things that might be a little bit different than some of the things that Theresa was talking about. And first, I just want to encourage people to kind of like Theresa was saying, envision how you want your piece to be displayed. You might already kind of have this in your head while you're creating the piece, or while you're applying to a show, but definitely before you drop off your piece, envision what you want it to look like when it's at the show. Because I had a young artist recently drop off a piece to us for a show, and it wasn't immediately visible how I should install the piece, and I asked her, like, how do you envision this being installed? And she said she didn't know, which is totally fair. I think maybe this was like her first show and she just like hadn't thought of it, but that's why we really put on workshops like this. So think about it ahead of time. I am also an artist, like Karis and Theresa mentioned, but a lot of my experience from the artist standpoint, I make two-dimensional work. So for 3D preparation, I'm mostly coming at it from a practical, like administrative standpoint, so I think a lot about the logistics of installing three-dimensional artwork. And definitely the most common way that 3D work will be installed is just on a pedestal or freestanding on the floor, which will just depend on, you know, if it's a smaller, more fragile piece, it'll probably be displayed on a pedestal. If it's a larger, heavier, very stable piece, it could be displayed just freestanding on the floor without a pedestal. And also, if you are displaying things on a pedestal, you can think of using museum wax, which I have a picture of here, which we use. It's really good for pieces that are like ceramic or glass. It's literally wax. You just roll up a couple balls of it, stick it on the bottom of your piece and sit it on the pedestal, and it helps stick it to the pedestal a little bit so it's more secure. Because like Theresa was saying, we want to install your piece and make it beautiful but also safe. And obviously we don't want, as like on the administrative side, people to be like touching your artwork without permission or bumping into it or something. But the museum wax is just an extra step. If someone bumps into a pedestal or something accidentally, it can add a layer of protection that'll help stick to the pedestal a little bit extra. What else? I think we can go to the next slide. Sometimes three-dimensional pieces you can still hang on the wall. Maybe it's like a painting that has three-dimensional elements, or it wouldn't work very well sitting on a pedestal or sitting on the floor, so you do want to adhere it to the wall somehow. And you can use 3D D-rings and wire like Theresa was talking about if that works for your piece. You can also use cleats. Sometimes they're also called French cleats. That's a type of hanging system, and these are some pictures of that. I've never used Picture Hang Solutions to order hanging equipment, but they had some really nice pictures and information about their hanging systems. And cleats are a great option for maybe like a heavier or bigger three-dimensional type piece that you're going to hang on the wall. And it's like two pieces that fit together. And like Theresa was saying, with the different rated D-rings that have multiple attachment points, usually cleats have multiple attachment points too, where it screws into your piece and into the wall and hangs together very sturdily. So that's an option as well. And then we can go on to the next slide, because sometimes you'll have 3D pieces that are very specific and they won't hang on a wall very well with like a D-ring or a wire or a cleat, and they won't work on a pedestal, and they'll need some kind of specialized hanging hardware. So this was like an example of a quilt that we showed at an exhibition last year, which was really large scale. And the picture on the top was the picture that she submitted in her application. And you can kind of see it was like hung essentially from the ceiling. But when we were hanging it in our show, we weren't going to be able to put stuff in the ceiling because the ceiling was really, really tall. So she was actually able to provide a quilt hanger, which is pictured in the bottom picture, that's specifically designed to hang quilts. Yeah, I feel like I'll talk a little bit more about it, but These are some ideas of different ways that you can install three-dimensional pieces and equipment that you can get ahead of time or think about. And if it is something really specialized that you think you might need some special hardware for, try looking for examples of other artists that create artwork that's similar to you and see how they're going about installing their work and see if you can take some inspiration. Or just look up, because if you looked up some more special considerations for displaying like 3D pieces, installation type things, multimedia pieces. So special considerations, you should definitely, like Theresa was saying, be in communication with the venue or the organization that's showing your piece. Because every organization kind of does things differently. In our applications for shows, we try to have a place in the application where you can list specific considerations for displaying your artwork so we can get that information ahead of time. But you can also, just after you get accepted into a show, reach out to the organization and say, hey, by the way, thanks for letting me be in the show. These are just some things I want to share with you so you can take into consideration while you're planning to install the show and everything like that. So yeah, some considerations are, first, just if your piece is like super, super heavy, because like Theresa was saying, you definitely want to make sure that on your end, you have the correct hardware installed on your piece so that when it's hung, it can be done safely. But then on the organization side, we also need to make sure that we're doing things correctly to install your piece safely. So if you're hanging it on a wall, you might need to drill into a stud to make sure it's really in there solid. If it's being hung on a hanging system like here at the depot, they might have like a weight limit that you can't hang over a certain weight on this. So, I need to be aware of it. And it just, might affect the layout of the show or how we're organizing things. So definitely let the organization know if you have a really heavy piece. For pieces that are displayed on a pedestal or freestanding or something that's like suspended from the ceiling or something like that, usually that should be clear to see in the images you submit in your application for a show, for example. So those would be things that, I would be taking into consideration when we're looking at the applications, like what are the installation needs ahead of time, but you can always follow up with the organization again and just let them be aware of those things. And then sometimes you might have a very detailed installation or just a piece of work that needs extra information about it. I'll talk a little bit more later about sending specific instructions to the gallery too, but I find a lot of pieces that are kind of abstract, you might want to tell the gallery how you want them installed. Even for like two-dimensional pieces, sometimes especially if the hanging hardware isn't super great on the back, it might be like unclear what way something is supposed to face, whereas like if it's a landscape, you can usually tell like, oh, this is the way that something is supposed to be hung on the wall. And it's even harder for three-dimensional abstract works. So if you have like a picture of how you want it to be set up, that's really helpful. Or sometimes you might just have a piece like installation-based or something that has a lot of different parts, and you can always, again, just reach out and communicate with the gallery because they might let you just come in and install it yourself if that would be the easiest solution. We've had people do that before. At a show last year, we had a piece that was just a bunch of individual printmaking pieces. They were just on paper, and he taped them on the wall and created this installation that was like 8 feet wide and like 4 feet tall. And he just came and brought the materials and installed it himself so he could make it look exactly how he wanted instead of having us do that. We were just like, hey, when you drop it off, if you want to install it, you can, and make sure it's exactly the way you want it. That might not be possible at every place, but you can always reach out to them and ask what they think. And then also, pieces that require electricity or specific technology are also a consideration. Again, sometimes there's things that an organization or a venue can provide to you if you have a piece like this, and then sometimes there's things that you might need to help them with or provide for them. Because, yeah, we've had shows where we can definitely provide, like, electricity and electrical outlet, extension cords, maybe like a projector or monitor to show a short film or video or digital piece. But if you have more specific equipment that you really need, like we've projected analog film at an exhibition before, and we don't have an analog film projector. Most places probably won't unless they're really specifically into film, or you need a bunch of really specifically sized monitors or special audio equipment and things like that. The venue or organization might not have all of that just in their possession or at their disposal. So if you have something that you've created and you have the ability to bring those materials with you, then that's super helpful. Because kind of like I was saying earlier, space-wise, hanging-wise, technological-wise, every venue and organization just has like different limitations and different things that they, can provide to artists. So again, a key point is really just communication. Just ask if you have any questions about what the organization can provide installation-wise and what you might need to help them provide if it's something really specific. And I think, yeah, we can go to the next slide. So those are some things to take into consideration for like preparing 3D work, installations, multimedia type things. And then I'm also gonna briefly touch on some administrative prep and also some transportation stuff. So yeah, like Theresa said, you get into a show, you prep your work, you have all like the physical stuff you have ready, and then you'll also have to do some like administrative stuff and get some like digital written type stuff together probably as well. And the first thing, if you're showing with an organization or gallery showing your art there, you're probably going to receive an agreement or a contract of some kind. And that can seem kind of scary, but it is really helpful because it will protect the organization and protect you as well, and just kind of provide like a roadmap of what to expect, like what the organization's going to provide and what they're asking from you. So if you get one, read the whole thing entirely and make sure you understand it. And if you don't understand some part of it or you have questions, definitely reach out to the organization and ask them about it. We had an artist a while ago that had a question about an agreement that we were asking them to sign. And she was like, I don't want to sign this because there's a part in here that's kind of confusing, or she had a question about, and we were able to help. We like reworded it and made things more clear. And then, yeah, it's like where our agreement and contract is better, she felt super comfortable having something slightly adjusted. So yeah, we're happy to help on like the organization side. So definitely ask questions about agreements and contracts you're signing. And you can also send an agreement or contract to a fellow artist. If you're like, maybe you haven't signed very many before and you want to see someone else's opinion and see if the agreement is a normal style agreement, you can also ask a fellow artist. Then once you're accepted into a show, you'll also have to provide your artwork details at some point. And like I was saying, sometimes all of this information is collected in your application before you get accepted into a show. Sometimes you'll enter all this information in your agreement or contract. Sometimes an organization will ask you to send it in an email or something. But it'll be usually like a title, medium, year, price, information like that. So make sure that is ready to go. And I think you can go to the next slide. Because yeah, in our digital resources kit, we have an example of an inventory list and like an email template if you need to send some of these resources and information to an organization or venue. When you get accepted into a show, we have some templates for you to use. And you also might be asked to submit some promotional information, which up next we'll have Chase, who's going to talk a little bit more about like marketing and promotion type stuff. But those things would usually be like an artist bio, a headshot, an artist statement, social media handles, because we want to display your art and make sure it's beautiful, but we also want to help promote you and share with everyone your information so they can learn more about you. So collecting that stuff from artists is really important too before an exhibition begins. And if you didn't attend our last Ask workshop that we did here at the depot, check it out. There's a recording on the OVAC website. It's on YouTube. Because we cover a lot of stuff about preparing these like written materials before you even submit an application, if you have questions about like bios and artist statements and all kinds of stuff like that. And yeah, then I think the last point that I wanted to say for the admin prep was if you have a piece that has some of those like special display considerations like I was talking about beforehand, like your piece is really heavy, you have specific instructions of how it needs to be installed, it needs certain technological equipment, feel free to like write some instructions, and if you're sending email communications to an organization or a venue, you can send them the instructions. They might request them from you, you can provide them, and sometimes artists will print them out and bring them with their physical piece when they drop it off too. I've received those and they're always really helpful. So again, just ask what would be helpful for them, and you can definitely provide specific instructions if you want your artwork installed in a specific way, or if it might be confusing just looking at it and you need to provide more information. So yeah, that's the admin stuff. Next, we'll talk a little bit about transportation of artwork, because yeah, sometimes I find the transportation of artwork a little bit stressful. Yeah, but usually you'll probably either have two options. It'll usually either be in a show that's close enough that you can just drive there and drop your piece off at the venue, or you'll have to ship it. Also, sometimes I've had artists from like Norman or Edmond ship stuff to our office in Oklahoma City. So if you get like really comfortable with shipping your artwork, you can also sometimes arrange to have it shipped even if it's a relatively short distance. Because sometimes I know it's more convenient for people to drop their artwork off at a post office that's like a few blocks away instead of like driving to Oklahoma City, where that might take 30 minutes or like an hour or multiple hours depending where you're located. But yeah, these are just some of the low-cost shipping materials that I find are really commonly used. Foam, bubble wrap, plastic sleeves. Those are really commonly used for putting like prints in for like vendor things and markets. But you can also use them for some 2D pieces if they're small enough. Cardboard boxes, packing tape, and like everyone's been mentioning, we have like a digital resource kit that we'll send out to you that has a list of vendors and like local places where you can buy hanging hardware, shipping supplies, and also some places you can order things from online that we recommend. And I think we can go to the next slide. If you are dropping a piece off locally and you don't have to ship it, you can usually use pretty minimal packing material. Like Theresa was saying, if you have a gallery wrapped canvas, those are usually like the most low key pieces. Like you put some D-rings and a wire on, it's good to go. A lot of artists that bring gallery wrap canvases to us, they don't even put any like protective material or anything on it. They just kind of like bring it to us, drive it in their car, and it's like good to go. And yeah, like I was saying, artwork and the install and the packing is not like one size fits all. So especially for packing, think about what your specific piece needs. If it's just a flat 2D gallery wrapped canvas, it might not need any like extra support or protection just to put it in your car and drive it to a venue. But sometimes people put multimedia stuff on the front of their canvases and it can be a little bit fragile. Or of course, if you have more of like a 3D piece or, ceramic or glass or something, even if you're transporting it just in your car, you'll probably want to put it in a box with some packaging, some bubble wrap or something. But yeah, sometimes people bring framed or canvas pieces just with some, like in a plastic sleeve or with some paper over the front, or glassine. I don't know if I mentioned that in here, but it'll probably be in the resource list. So you can just use very minimal packaging if you're just dropping it off. If you're shipping your piece, for 2D pieces, they're pretty easy. You can put them in a cardboard box, usually just with like a little foam and bubble wrap. They'll be pretty secure, because especially if it's canvas with the wooden stretchers, that provides a lot of support, or if it's in a frame, the paper piece in a frame is going to be protected by the frame, and then with the bubble wrap and the box, it'll have lots of layers of protection. You can also use, I had a picture, some corner protectors to put around like the sharp edges of a frame or canvas to help protect those if you're shipping it in a box. But 2D works are usually pretty simple. 3D works, I don't have a ton of experience shipping 3D works. Seems very stressful. Like Theresa mentioned, Trent Lawson, who works at the Oklahoma City Museum of Art, does workshops sometimes, and he's a great resource because he's a preparator at the Oklahoma City Museum of Art, and he goes into a lot of depth about really securely packing all kinds of works for shipping. But putting a 3D piece in a box with foam that is like specifically fitted to the piece is probably going to be the best way to protect it when you're shipping your piece. So that way, these pictures from Uline that are showing some of the materials that they provide are really great examples where there's like uniform material all the way around it to protect the piece. And also a tip, I drew this like funky little doodle over here, but make sure you really get a box that's big enough for the piece and a bunch of packing material to go in if it's especially a 3D piece. You don't want this where the box is kind of like bowing because you've stuffed so much stuff inside, because it might seem like a good idea. You're like, I'm packing so much bubble wrap and foam in here, like this piece is really gonna be secure. But if it's bowing like that, and then stuff gets stacked on top of it when it's like in shipping, it's really gonna create a pressure point where a lot of stuff, if something gets stacked on top of it, that weight is really gonna create a pressure point and could really damage your piece. So like I was saying, these two examples are really good where it's just uniform packing all the way across and it's not so jam-packed that it's gonna create pressure points that could potentially damage your piece. What else? I think lastly, I ship a lot of things through USPS, and you can add on extra features if you're shipping. Like obviously you can label your piece as fragile, it's no guarantee like actually how your piece will get treated, but definitely as a precaution. You can add extra insurance or ask, I think it's for an extra charge, but you can ask for them to ask for a signature when the piece gets delivered, so that way you can really make sure someone is there and received it and signed for it. But yeah, so it's not a guarantee that everything will go smoothly. I feel like everything that we're talking about, like putting the hanging hardware on, shipping your pieces, packaging them, is all just, you need to get comfortable with it and practice it, because the more you do it, you'll learn what works best for you and for your artwork. So I think we can go to the next slide. And yeah, just some last little transport things before I pass it to Chase. When you're looking for packaging, shipping, or storage materials like boxes or paper or things like that, you can always look for materials that are acid-free or archival. Because yeah, I feel like the packing and shipping and archival things could be like a whole other workshop unto itself. But if you're really worried about the longevity and safety of your pieces, definitely do some research about acid-free and archival materials. They'll help protect your piece. Just so, you know, you create a beautiful piece and then you have to wrap it in packing material to store it or ship it. And if you're really worried about the quality of those materials, you want to look for acid-free or archival. And yeah, I think that is all of the tips that I had so far. If anybody has any quick questions before I pass it over to Chase.
Is there a shipping company that would be either recommended to use or recommended to avoid in particular? Or especially for shipping items that are very fragile?
Like I said, I personally don't have a ton of experience shipping really fragile artworks. I always ship everything through USPS, and I've never had like a bad experience with them. I feel like sometimes at OVAC we'll send letters in the mail, and sometimes those get lost in the mail because it's literally like one single envelope. I think those things are a little bit, and they don't have any tracking information on them. It's just one postage stamp and you like send it out. Those are the only things that I've ever gotten lost in the mail. Every package that I've sent has always like arrived in really good condition, and I've never had anything get lost. But yeah, I would probably assume that the standard companies like USPS, FedEx, UPS would probably be pretty comparable, because there are companies that specifically ship artwork, but they're extremely expensive and very specialty. And you know, if you're a really high-end gallery or a museum or something, you're definitely working with like a specific company that handles moving artwork. But yeah, for regular shipping artwork, I don't have any specific brand loyalty or recommendations, I guess. Yeah.
You know, I have a funny experience. I was working at Arts with the title center in Oklahoma City, and the tour manager so that guy had a show at Art Space. He lives in Portland. He used to be the tour guide for Miley Cyrus. And when we got this exhibition, the crate was beautiful. It had like prints, and it was like a piece of art itself. And we asked him, so like, well, you know, touring with Miley Cyrus, I always had my box, my instruments and all that, they were really cool looking. And he noticed that the people and the crew was treating those boxes more carefully than the regular standard, you know, equipment. So that's where he learned that if you present something like that in a more, let's say, beautiful way, quote unquote, people might treat it better. And so yeah, that was just like a funny thing to consider. Maybe.
Yeah. For the recording's sake, Fernando was telling an anecdote about an artist that made a really beautifully decorated crate to ship all of his stuff in. And his experience was that workers treated the crate better because it was kind of perceived as being beautiful and almost like it was an artwork itself than other standard crates and boxes. So that is interesting. Because, yeah, I know some companies, too, have really special packaging that they put all their stuff in that's, like, branded packaging, even the box on the outside. So, yeah, interesting thought. Any other questions real quick?
I was just saying, you know, those luggage meters where you get on Southwest Airlines.
Oh, yeah. One person was saying a luggage meter to help weigh things. Yeah, at our office, we have like a postage scale, which is really helpful if you're mailing out even like a lot of prints, maybe like in envelopes. Because again, I just always ship everything through USPS. They have like a calculator on their website where you can put in the dimensions and weight of a piece, and it'll tell you how much it's going to cost. So that way you can just do all the packaging and everything yourself at home, and you don't have to take it to the post office and wait in line to calculate all the stuff. You can just weigh it yourself at home and print the packaging and labels and everything, and it's really easy. Yeah. Any other questions real quick? Cool. We'll probably have more time for questions at the end too. So yeah, I'll pass it over to Chase to talk about some marketing stuff.
All right, thank you very much. So I've been in the marketing world for about 12 years. I've been in the art world a little bit longer than that. My life has taken parallel paths with the arts and with marketing, and it's no coincidence that I now have, or I co-manage an art gallery that also has a full-service media agency in it with Uncanny Art House and Uncanny Media. So that's where I'm coming from, and I love marketing. I think that if there's one takeaway from this that I'd like for you to remember, it's that marketing is very simply just communication with people. So like, it doesn't have to be scary, it doesn't have to be mystifying or anything. It's just simply how you communicate with people and what you want them to know about your work. So I'll try to stick to my notes here. Yeah, starting before you start. This is something you can start even today. That you went to a workshop, at OVAC, that you're bettering yourself as an artist, that you're interested in networking with your community. That is an important part of your artist identity. So everything you do as an artist is kind of part of your process. So documenting your process regularly means, if you're gathering supplies, if you are working on a piece of art, of course, but also even excuse me, I ran out of water. If you're preparing your work to ship somewhere, this is all interesting content that people who are going to potentially purchase your work would like to know about you as a person. They want to see the journey. So yeah, show your journey. Capture behind the scenes, work in progress, studio content. As someone that is also an art collector, I love seeing where people work. There's something very interesting about seeing your studio environment. What kind of environment creates what kind of work, whether that be someone working outdoors or in the cities or in a basement, who knows. But it all can be reflected in their work, and it's all interesting content that can be used in your marketing. Build a ready-to-use content library. So again, this can be anything and everything related to your work. A lot of artists that we interact with through Uncanny don't really seem to think about needing that kind of stuff until it's time for the show. But you could definitely do yourself a favor and have lots of that, lots of photo content and written content ready ahead of time, so that whenever you get into a show, whenever a gallery needs it, or whether press might need it, a blurb about your work, or a few photos, that you have quality, high-resolution images to send, that what you want to say about your work. So let's see, be consistent, update your site and profiles regularly to boost your SEO. So I was going to say a little bit about like how marketing is kind of divided into two groups in my brain. There's the kind of intuitive part of marketing that is literally just communication, everything that you say about your work and about your person. And then the kind of non-intuitive side is like the digital side. So SEO, any part of your art world, your art life that touches the internet, essentially. So your website, your social media, emails that you send to clients and things like that. So all of that basically uses SEO, which is a term for how robot algorithms send information to people. And the way that you make the most of that is by having consistent messaging. So you might not think about your bio as being very important for your work, but it many times is the only thing that people could see of you as an artist. If you send your bio to a website that has a high score on Google, for instance, somewhere like the Northern Arts Council website or the OVAC website, because they have a lot of visitors, if they have your bio there, then it might come up first on a search result. So definitely having something there that makes people stop and think about your work as an artist, and can get to know you quickly, so that they can kind of learn more or are interested in seeing more of your work. And then, being consistent with that throughout your social media profiles and website biographies is very important too, just so that if there's something about you that makes your work special, whether it be that you're talking about indigenous culture or race culture or growing up on a farm in Texas or whatever the case may be, that there's some kind of consistent storyline that can be picked up on by people. And that consistency is actually part of the robot algorithms that Google and other sites use as well. So search friendly keywords for your content. If you work in a specific medium, you might definitely want to include that. So if people are looking for oil paintings in Oklahoma, that is somehow in your bio, in your website content. If they're looking for black and white photography, that get a little bit granular on your genre and like what type of stuff that you cover. If you're a live music photographer but you only cover jazz, or something like that, get into that. Let's see. Be prepared. Okay, so this comes to more of the actual exhibition angle. Whenever you are going to have an exhibition at a gallery, especially if they have a retail area, then you want to make sure that you bring prints, stickers, any kind of work, or any kind of merchandise that is related to your work, so that the gallery can use that in their own retail. Like for Uncanny as an example, we have both an online retail and an in-person store, and all of the artists that we exhibit there, we put their work on both of those locations so that they get more SEO coverage, and people can just have more exposure to their work. Repurposing your application materials. In the last workshop, we talked a lot about what an application should look like, the types of high-resolution photos that you need for those, making sure that you have names for all your artwork, that you have an artist statement that reflects your personal brand, all of those things. So, once you have that, you want to use it as many times as possible. Recycle that content. So you can use those photos on your social media, on the website. You can send them with press releases. You can definitely send them to the gallery that you're going to be exhibiting at. They'll, be able to reuse those too. So I actually started my marketing journey very early, like I was like 17, 18, as in a rock and roll band, trying to get people to come to our shows. And in a rock band or in a band, you have to have a press kit. Basically, it's something you send to every venue ahead of your show. It's kind of similar being an artist with a gallery. You got to have some kind of like press kit. So that's your collected photo materials, biography, anything relevant to your work that you need to share with others. Because again, it comes back to marketing being mass communication. So anything that you want to communicate, make sure you have it in one place. So headshots definitely included there. People want to know who they're buying work from. People want to know who they're going to go see work from. Web and social pages and links. Yeah, we can move on. Oh, you're good. I kind of already touched on website stuff, so that's fine. Stop, collaborate, and listen. We want to make sure that, okay, so a couple of people get the joke. Yeah, I was worried about that. So this comes down to like collaboration with the gallery, which from a gallery perspective means a whole lot. Ariana and others, during these workshops have talked about collaboration and communication with the gallery. You definitely want to communicate as much as is reasonable with galleries to know like what their release schedule for information is going to be, or are they making a Facebook event? Because you definitely don't want to have like 2 competing Facebook events for the same exhibition or something like that. There's a number of ways that galleries can promote shows, and so as an artist, get curious. Involve yourself with that. Do whatever you can to help them out, share their content, collaborate with them on how it should go. Every gallery kind of does things a different way, so the only way you're going to figure it out for sure is just by communicating with them about it and making sure that they have what they need to promote you. So yeah, sharing, tagging the gallery's content. If you have any questions about how to do that with social media or something, you can get with me afterwards. Happy to walk through anybody's social media stuff, because I know it's intuitive to everybody. Let's see. Engage with comments. Okay, so yeah, once you're, a lot of this has been about promoting the show coming up, but once you're, it's time for the actual show, there's still marketing that needs to happen. You're going to be actively, taking pictures of your show, doing networking and, tagging other people that are at the show. You want to like maybe share live video feeds from the show, things like that. All of this can help boost your SEO. It can grow your audience. It can, if you're tagging, OVAC at an OVAC show or something, then, they could share it. You can collaborate on posts. There's a lot of different options for how to do that with social media, which again, I'm happy to go over with anybody that needs to afterwards. I did not make a 10-minute video of going through this on my phone, but maybe I should do that in the future. Let's see. And yeah, engaging with comments too. This kind of is more of a social media part of things, but every time that someone comments on a post that you make on social media, you want to respond to it, not just a like. That's just because that's the way the robots work. They love a comment, they love a share, those types of things. That's why people are always saying like and share, subscribe, and all that stuff, is because the more that people interact with something, the more it gets put into other people's feeds because it's viewed as high quality content. So that's how that all works. Make sure that you're engaging with people who are engaging with you. It's literally just the same as communication. If somebody comes up to you and talks to you, you say something back. It's intuitive. So, and then speaking of which, yeah, inviting people personally is still the best marketing you can do. Mirror neurons are real. If you're excited about your show and you are, it might be your first show. It might be a group show on a theme that's really exciting for you. I know they have a really cool landscape show coming up here. That's really exciting for people who are into landscape work. And so show that excitement to your friends and family, to everyone in your network. I read a quote today that your network is bigger than you think. You just have to engage it. It's very true. You don't really know who all you could potentially reach until you start putting yourself out there and seeing what you can do. So let's see. Go live, post story content during the show. I think I'd cover that a little bit before. And then after the show, you want to continue the marketing. It never ends, really, because marketing is communication. You always want to communicate about what you're doing. So you want to post recap content, the photos that you took during the show, you and your friends, people buying your work, you throwing lots of money in the air, all that stuff. people are going to be interested, and it's also ways that you can tag others and collaborate with others through social media. And yeah, let's see, even if it's not directly after the show, if it's weeks later, months later, years later, you can still talk about the show. It was still something that's meaningful to you, so you can post throwback content. Remember when I did this cool thing? Someone could be finding out about you for the first time. They don't know that you did this cool show. They don't know maybe that you're an artist. And so like every time you post, have that in mind that it might be someone's first time interacting with you or with your work. So you've kind of got to have that angle to everything that you put online, especially. I feel like I'm going really fast, but I'm more of like a Q&A person. Sorry. I have so much to say about marketing, but I don't know like exactly how to focus it in, so that's why I'm staying with my notes. So I'm going to go to the marketing checklist a little bit, which is this awesome thing that Karis made for us. Thank you, by the way. So it's good to have all these things. This kind of goes back to that press kit sort of thing that I talked about earlier. In your bio, you want to make sure you have your location, education background, kind of your past exhibits, factual information. Also making sure to hit those SEO key points of like your medium, genre, anything unique especially about your work, like what sets you apart as an artist, what matters to you. I mean, why do you make art? That's kind of stuff that people are interested in, and that's the kind of stuff that you need to know for sure, and you like need to be able to put into words to explain to others, especially if it's succinct. Like in film, they talk about like the elevator pitch. If you can talk about a film script to somebody in like 30 seconds, then it helps them understand the idea. So whenever I meet people like in the marketing world, I say like, my name's Chase, I'm here to help. So that's like kind of my thing. So like everything in my identity is about being helpful, especially like with marketing, whether it be businesses, nonprofits, or artists. So why do you make art? What matters to you? What are you trying to say with your work? Your artist statement, pretty much, yeah, that's what I just was kind of talking about. So yeah, it's called an artist statement. Yes. I'm a little new as an artist. I mostly work on the gallery side and the marketing side. But let's see. Mediums, concepts. When it comes to photos of you, it doesn't always have to be like a, like a movie star headshot or like a business card headshot. It's fine if you have that and they're beautiful, but don't be afraid to make it representative of you and your work as an artist. Your, photo could be abstract. It could be you in a field. It could be you working in your studio. Whatever matters to you. Again, like marketing is where you get to really be you outside of your actual work. Think about how you present to the world as an extension of your work. It doesn't have to be something that's different and alien to you. But it does need to be high resolution because everywhere else that it's shared, it needs to be able to be printed and put on websites and things like that. Links for websites and social media. If you don't have a website, if you don't have social media, it's still possible to market. I kind of wanted to say that too. A lot of what I deal with is in the digital world, but it's not exclusive to digital. So there's plenty of ways to market nowadays. I feel like especially because of the oversaturation of the digital marketing world and AI, that it's more important than ever to have those in-person marketing exposures, and print and things like that are becoming more popular. So yeah. But, of course, we are still living in the digital age. So if you have social media, make sure everybody that you are sharing your work with knows what it is. I actually got a question yesterday from a friend of mine that was wondering if they should have a separate social media handle for their artist's persona and one for like their personal life. I feel like that's kind of up to you as an artist. If you're somebody that is sharing a ton of photos of their dogs and like their Asian food and stuff, then maybe it wouldn't work for an artist's profile to have that. But it also could. It just kind of depends on what your work says. So that's up to every individual artist, but definitely something for you to consider. It doesn't hurt anything for you to have 2 profiles, except 2 notifications to turn off. And then your contact information for sure. So recap. Communication is the main thing to take away from this. Communicate with the people that you want to see your work, and communicate with the galleries. That's the most important things you can do to market your work, to make sure that everything goes smoothly for your show. And any questions? We'll go left to right, sorry. Go ahead.
So on high resolution, are you talking about like PNG versus JPEG, or are you talking like pixels? What do you mean whenever you say high resolution?
Cool question. I've never gotten that one. So our question is basically file format of photos, which one works best. I really think that probably JPEG would be the easiest, as long as it's the high enough resolution. So resolution is kind of like how many pixels are in the image. So if you've got, I'd say like 1500 and above on every direction, that's probably high enough for most uses, for standard uses. There might be some people out there that are disagreeing with me, but I mean, I keep photos that are like 3,000, 4,000. This is true. But if I get a 1500, that's good. I can do a lot with that. The problem is when you have these like phone pictures from older phones or something that are like 400 or 500 pixels, and it just looks really choppy whenever you try to blow it up. So if you can blow it up to a good size on your computer, then do that. I mean, most cameras and phones take pictures that are high resolution already nowadays. So as long as you don't do anything to it to shrink it, then it's probably going to work just fine.
But some of us need to shrink them because they're way too big.
Well, that can happen too.
Yeah. And then the second question with like your social media, specifically on Instagram, how cohesive does your grid need to be on Instagram? If you're
An Instagram grid, how cohesive does it need to be? That's kind of a matter of taste, I think, and it depends on what your personal brand is. When I'm meeting with like business clients, for example, really the first thing we have to do is figure out what your message is, like what your brand identity is. And if your brand identity is something where like say you're a black and white photographer, every picture that you have is like an Ansel Adams style photo, you might want to have it laid out in such a way where it looks like a gallery wall, but like for me, I'm kind of a multimedia artist. I'm all over the place, and my feed looks like I'm all over the place too. There's some video, there's some painting, there's some neon stuff, and so I don't even know how I'd begin to make that look cohesive. But it just depends on what you're doing as an artist. And I think that it's certainly something you can take advantage of, and why not? Like if it works for you to make your feed look like a little mini gallery, that's definitely going to have a big impact when somebody lands there. Any other questions? Yes?
So, thank you for that, because that was my question also, was the high resolution question. But another one, do you guys have recommendations for local print shops that are economical and good quality, that we could either get, marketing material like flyers and that type of thing, printed up cards, and or prints, quality prints of our work that aren't like egregiously expensive, because for rope artists,
Yeah, I feel like every artist likes to be economical. We'll just put it that way. I found almost every locally owned print shop that I've reached out to has been pretty reasonable about pricing, or they'll be able to price match. When I've gone to FedEx, it has almost broke me. So I would say find a locally owned print shop and figure out something you can do with them. Again, sorry, the question to online people was about economical print making. And are you talking about printing for like flyers and posters, or like professional prints? Okay, because there's not a lot of local, there's not a lot of printing locally in general, whether they be owned locally or owned nationally, that do art prints. But there's people have something to say about this.
I was just going to say, Oscillator Press, now they focus mainly on screen printing. but you can, if you tell them what your project is and what you're thinking of doing, they can usually either help you figure out a reasonable cost for your printing needs, or just get you in the right direction. And they're
Yeah.
just here on Main Street in Norman.
Sublime
Okay.
Signs is another one too.
Right.
That's locally owned, they're in Sublime Signs, and they've printed out like poster-sized photos for me.
Again, it just kind of depends on what medium you're needing. So I know like one of my friends has a print shop, but they only work with photography paper because of the type of printer that they use. So yeah, it just depends on, but yeah, reach out to a locally owned shop.
And also, in Oklahoma City, there's a guy, his name is Evan Beasley.
Evan Beasley.
He takes like super high resolution pictures or scans, like the artwork, and he uses archival papers and inks and all that, and the quality is great, and I think that his prices are reasonable.
Yeah, and he'll do the photo shoots, and that, there, for me, was too expensive, but he also accepted my own photographs that I just did with my.
I know that the
And he
PAC,
had a variety of papers and stuff.
sorry to interrupt you, I know that the PAC has Chandler Watson that comes out for OVAC to actually photograph artists' like works, but, and I know for OVAC members, it's like a discounted price to have that done, but the photographing it isn't the problem, it's the like getting prints and having prints ready.
Yeah.
That piece of it, I'm just sort of like, just randomly Googling and hoping that it's not.
Yeah, I've used some online resources for printing art prints before, but I'd really prefer to do it locally. I'm not sure if OVAC has like a resource list for like art prints, but it might be something we could look into.
I'll add Evan's information and
Cool.
some of the stuff that y'all have mentioned into like our big lead kit.
Awesome.
What was his name again? Evan?
Beasley,
Yeah.
yeah, EV photos, EV photo.
I use Evan as well, I'm really happy with the products.
And I didn't know if anybody used any, like, they have those national drop shipping, get your prints sent out after they're purchased.
Sorry to interrupt, but I've used Finer Work, and they're affordable. Now, I like to do a local as well. And Main Street Photography will do the photo for you. He's done some of mine. But Finer Works does a good, I'm watercolor, so it's really good for me. Mine are small pieces, But they've done a great job for like $10 for a, 8x8 or whatever. I mean, it's not nothing that's on big paper. It's I don't know if I'm saying this right, but Jiggly.
Mm-hmm. Cheekly. Okay, so yeah, we'll have that added to the resource guide. Locally owned printers. Again, there's screen printers, there's photo printers, there's people that can photograph your work, and yeah, different types of inks work well on different types of papers too. See, that's one of the nice things about working with any locally owned printer is they're going to be able to know about which types of papers and inks work well for your medium. And then you just want to form a relationship with somebody like that, essentially. Any other questions? Hi.
And it's probably, y'all have passed the point I'm going to ask this question about. But if I want to take pictures of my work and I'm sitting here looking at it, and to me, the depth and the texture and everything is just right. When I go to take a photo of it, I'm having trouble with that part of making it look like I'm seeing it in front of me. So my question is, anybody have any ideas about how, because if you submit here, which I did, then you want it to look like it's going to look up there.
Mm-hmm.
Any suggestions on how to get to that point?
Well, I do a lot of photography. I'm actually, starting in January, we're going to do photography for artworks here at Uncanny for OVAC members as well. I would say it just kind of depends on the settings of your camera. A lot of, like either it's going to be a focus issue, an exposure issue, or a color balance issue. So it sounds like what you're talking about is that it doesn't look color correct? Or,
A lot of it's color, isn't it? Yeah.
okay.
I mean, we've used the scanner, we've used my phone, which is high resolution.
Mhm.
I have to struggle with getting the vibrancy and the look of the piece I'm seeing. And obviously, I'm doing okay because I get it online and it's accepted. But I want to know if anybody has a better idea of how to do that than what I'm doing.
It's hard just because every phone and camera has a different type of sensor that handle colors differently. They have like a tiny little software that's built in that manages the colors for every type of sensor. And, you know, so that's where you'll get people talking about Nikon cameras versus Canon cameras versus all this stuff is because of how the color management. Right. So it's just kind of getting as close as you can. And then if you have any kind of photo grading software like a Photoshop or something like that, then you can sort of just have your work, have the photo and get it as close as you can. Yeah. We just do your best, you know. And color balancing with the camera, like making sure you have manual settings on the color. It's like if you know that you're shooting under 2700 Kelvin light, then you can set that temperature on your camera, and that will help you a lot.
Sometimes the best photos I've taken are outside on a
Yes,
bad day.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, well outdoors are very forgiving because you don't. I mean, it's like no shadow. So yeah. Back in the back.
I think it's also important to note that we all know that art looks better in person. And so getting the best representation of what you're presenting via camera, like we understand, yes, learn more, get more, but as we're looking at art, we know it's not going to look the exact same in person as it does on the computer.
Like from a administrator perspective, you're saying we know that it's not going to. I'm trying to remember to repeat. Yeah, galleries understand that it doesn't look the same whenever you photograph a work as what they're going to see in person. We all know it's going to look better in person, but we're trying to figure out how to best photograph it and make it match.
So I have another suggestion for that purpose, because we have seen some pieces, we see the picture, and sometimes they take a photo next to an object, and sometimes as an administrator you can think that that object is part of the piece. So, just like with practice, if you have just even like a white piece of paper that you can buy at the Dollar Tree or something like that, just put your artwork there and take a photo so it's clear that this is what you're going to get.
There were some great points made about that. Sorry, for the people at home, you're talking about making sure that there's no background objects in the photo whenever your submission photos. I was also wanting to say that in the application ready workshop, we covered a lot of the like how to take photos of your work to submit, and that's on the OVAC YouTube for you to check out. So it has some really handy guidance about like cropping your photos and all that stuff. So. And I think they have like better DPI guidance and everything on the resolution too than just my off-the-cuff remarks. So you might want to check that out. Any other questions? Okay.
Sorry, is it me or?
Go ahead.
I know you mentioned search engine optimization earlier, and I think that's really important. And I didn't know if that was something that we could expand on. I'm not even quite sure what questions to ask, but I know there's probably a lot. And I think that's something that I find really difficult, and I think that is what you're talking about when you end up on people's feeds. And
right.
That's a lot harder than it looks.
Search engine optimization is the question. Okay, yeah. And that's like half the businesses that come in the door on the marketing side of things too. Because search engine optimization isn't like a one button that you can push. It's really a word for a combination, like a suite of things, which include the consistency of your messaging, your site's credibility, or which is like how many times you're visited, both by people searching for your site, how many links into your site, how many links out of your site, the cohesiveness of your web page between every page. There's so many factors. The AI readiness too is a recent addition to that. So if you pull up ChatGPT or something and you say, like, show me an oil painting artist in Norman, then who's going to show up? I mean, like, who knows, right? It's whoever has the best SEO on their website, unfortunately, not like the best artist. So that's something that you just have to think about, because it's really so many things. There's also accessibility issues that come into play. So making sure that all of your images on your website have alt text added, and things like that, alternate languages embedded into your site. It all just improves your site's score, so that the robots think it's good. And yeah, I mean, if you need any help specifically with a site, or you have specific questions about how to improve something, please let me know. I could talk about that all day. But it really, it's a kind of case-by-case basis thing. I can look at a site and tell you what you need to do to improve the SEO. So yeah, any other questions? You're in the middle, in the back? Yes?
Well, I have such a problem with, I have a great time getting clarity with photographing my paintings, but every little weave shows up. I mean, every weave picks up highlight.
Mm-hmm.
Just oil paintings, it picks up all the highlights on the canvas. So I know you're supposed to do any magic about it.
So you're talking about lighting indoors?
Lighting indoors.
Yeah, that can be really challenging. So I actually worked with Whitney Bettress in the Cowboy Museum, and photographing some of those works, we would have to be under glass because they're archival, and we didn't, want to mess anything up. And we're in the basement. So yes, trying to do our best with 30-degree lights, and I mean, it's really just kind of, you got to keep messing with it until you find something that works. Because what you're seeing, the weave, is the contrast that the light's creating in the texture of your surface, and you can diffuse the lights to help with that. So basically, you can get these umbrellas to put in front of your lights for like $20 on Amazon. That will help a lot. You can try using a lens with a lower f-stop, so that you don't need as much light. You can try adding some more lights from like top and bottom and the sides. If it's a reflection issue, sometimes I've had to build a big cardboard piece with a tiny hole cut in it so that I'm not in the reflection of the image or of the painting or whatever. And just take the picture through the little hole. There's a lot of different methods, but I mean, it kind of just depends on the piece and what you're seeing. But there's always a way. You just got to keep kind of working with it. Notice where the light's coming from. Notice where your shadows are, and just keep adjusting the light. You can bounce light off of walls. That's a really helpful way to photograph works that are stubborn, or off of a ceiling. Sometimes too, if I can find that I get half of the painting photographable the way I want it, then I'll do like half in one photo, half in another, and then stitch them together in Photoshop. Don't tell Whitney I did that, but yeah, that's archival no-no. But sometimes this is just what you have to do. Somebody else in the back?
I'm from a smaller town, so this doesn't make sense.
You're from where?
Sorry.
Small town.
Oh, cool.
Oklahoma City has a lot of art galleries, and I'm not used to that where I used to live. I'm trying to break into that world of getting your art into the galleries. How many pieces would you suggest presenting?
So the question is, so if you're not from the Oklahoma City area, there's a lot of galleries. How do you break into getting your piece shown at galleries? So that's interesting. It's like marketing from a perspective of trying to get galleries' attention, or trying to, so you're submitting applications and you want to present as an artist that has work ready to go. I don't know that it's even a how many question as far as it is, or as it is a quality issue. Because I think that someone could get a show with one piece of work if it was really an incredible piece. And that's just speaking from a gallery admin perspective, not a marketing perspective. But I know that you as an artist, you want to keep practicing, and you want to show the progress of your work, and you want to show that you have a direction, like that you're going somewhere else with your vision, with what you want to say as an artist. That really helps, market yourself to, not only a potential crowd, but also to galleries. So, yeah, it's about building your brand. It's about showing your best work as often as possible, too. Make sure that it's the one that's getting seen, or if you have a few that you're like particularly proud of, that's what's getting seen. Because we actually showed an artist earlier this year where they turned in 2 pieces on their application, and the piece was just not really what I was expecting from an artist that was submitting for a group exhibition. Just kind of looked like some acrylic sort of smeared on the canvas, and I was like, well, that might not work out. But then I saw a second one that was way later in the Google Drive folder of their work, because it was named differently, and I was like, oh, well, that one's amazing. They almost didn't get in just because I encountered a work that was, like the quality difference was so vast that it was kind of like confusing almost. But yeah, lead with your best is what I'm saying, I guess. Does that make sense? All right. Does anybody else have anything to say about that? I feel like I'm a...
Well, we usually, as you know, like I think that we have an average of from 3 to 5 pieces. I think that's what I've seen the standard, and it depends on the show as well. Because sometimes, like if you want to show, if you are a mixed media artist and you want to show, like different media that you've been working on, then you can probably submit 2 paintings and 2 three-dimensional pieces, or it depends on the show basically. But the standard for us is usually 5 pieces, 3 to 5 pieces. I think it's a good reflection of your body of work.
Yeah. So 5 pieces being a good reflection of your body of work, a good like rule of thumb for how many to submit. Again, though, yeah, like you were saying, it depends on the show. And going back to your point about how to break into the scene, I think the greatest part, where you want to start is going for group shows. Because, we'll get artists that have never shown work before at Uncanny, and they'll want to, present to us like, I want to show 20 works of my own and have my own solo show. That's most of the time not where artists start. You start with group exhibitions and things like that, like fundraising exhibitions, and then get your work noticed by other artists, network, and then create from there. So, anybody else? Oh.
With the group expeditions, as far as like finding those.
We have a monthly newsletter that we send out, which is a really cool resource. We send opportunities that are open and like just all kinds of updates in the art world that you might want to know. And then also on our website, you can go, we have a calendar. I think it's like a resource calendar on our website that just has a calendar of all different kinds of like events and exhibitions that you can just go to, but also applications and opportunities that are open that you can apply to. So check out the website. And yeah, we have like a couple shows, usually like 3 shows throughout the year, so you can look at our exhibitions, but also Uncanny has shows. Theresa and the Paseo Arts and Creativity Center, and also just the galleries have lots of shows too over in the Paseo. So yeah, follow all of us if you don't on social media, because usually every gallery and venue will always post like when they have an open call for shows. which is why it's always great to like have, like Fernando and Chase were saying, an idea of what your best pieces are, have some pieces ready, because sometimes calls come up and it might be a little bit short notice, like you're like, oh, I just saw this opportunity and the deadline is like in a week, and you want to like go ahead and submit. So always just making sure you're like having all of this information and stuff we've covered ready so you can submit to any opportunity you see at any time. And then, yeah, these are some of the events that we have coming up at OVAC. We have a critique night. Applications are open right now. If you're a young artist or know a young artist, 30 or under, we have applications open for Momentum. If you need your artwork photographed, we have that coming up. And we also do grants for artists, if you have questions about that. If you have questions about any OVAC things, we have business cards in the back, so you can have our direct email and just feel free to contact us with questions. And then the Depot, PAA, and also Uncanny have lots of events and openings and things coming up. So yeah, please stay connected with us and follow along for more things. Do you guys have anything else to say or more questions? I don't think we do. You can come up and take a picture of it if you'd like to.
It will be in the Google Drive as well, in your digital resource.
Cool.
A copy of all the slides.
Yeah, we'll be sending out an email if you registered with all of the digital resources, a copy of this slideshow and everything. If you want to give us your email before you leave to make sure you get these and you didn't register or something, you can stop by our table on the way out. But yeah, thank you guys so much for coming. Are there any other questions or anything else before we go? Cool. Well, thank you, Uncanny. Thank you, Paseo. Thank you, Depot.